Donald Trump seemed taken aback when a CNN reporter just asked him at the White House to react to President Biden's cancer diagnosis for the first time on camera. The visibly confused Trump did not respond with any sort of meaningful compassion or empathy, and instead spent most of his time stumbling his way through a vaguely incoherent partisan political attack, attacking Biden's health and mental fitness, boasting about his own health and mental fitness, while also screwing up key details about Biden's cancer diagnosis, which he also suggested without evidence was being concealed by various people as part of a conspiracy. And he also illustrated the stark contrast to his own conduct compared to how President Biden reacted publicly and privately when Donald Trump's health was in jeopardy last year, the assassination attempt against him. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, as I'm sure you have no doubt heard, President Biden was diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer. It's stage 4. Doesn't look good, okay? And we're still getting more information. Now, in the aftermath of that, Donald Trump issued a public statement that many have speculated was not actually written by him because it was properly spelled, it was, civil, it was courteous, things that are antithetical to Trump. And Donald Trump has a rhetorical flourish in all caps, and his public statements are usually prone to spelling and grammatical errors. And we know reportedly he has an assistant on hand who drafts messages on his account. Not all of them, but from time to time. This reads like one. So he issued a statement that says, Melania and I are saddened to hear about Joe Biden's recent medical diagnosis. We extend our warmest and best wishes to Jill and the family, and we wish Joe a fast and successful recovery. Does that sound like Donald Trump? No, especially when you consider Trump's incessant attacks, even after the election, on President Biden's character, his mental health, his cognitive function, his record, all of it. It's just unending. There was an analysis saying that Trump has mentioned Biden by name an extraordinary amount of time since winning the election. He won the election against Kamala Harris. Like Joe Biden dropped out before the election. It's like Trump has Biden on the brain, and it's to insult him, okay? Which brings us to this. Caitlin Collins gets to speak to Donald Trump at the White House, and she asked him point blank to his face to react to President Biden's cancer diagnosis. And note the tone difference.
Do you want to respond to President Biden being diagnosed with cancer? Are you going to call your predecessor?
I think it's very sad, actually. I'm surprised that it wasn't, the public wasn't notified a long time ago, because to get to stage 9, that's a long time. I just had my physical. You saw that. You saw the results of that particular test. I think that test is standard to pretty much anybody getting a physical, good physical. We had the doctors at the White House and over at Walter Reed, which is a fantastic hospital, do it. I did a very complete physical, including cognitive tests. I'm proud to announce I aced it. Got them all. I got them all right. You proud of me? Yes. Your husband would be proud of me for getting them all right. It's a little risk. If I didn't get them all right, these people would be after me. It would be not a good situation. But I think, frankly, anybody running for president should take a cognitive test. They say it's
Do you want to respond?
So we've got more, but you see where this is going, right? Rather than answer the question like, no, I've not called him, but I intend to, or yes, I have called him, but the details are private, sidesteps it. But again, there's more to answer. And instead, he makes it all about him and an attack on President Biden's mental fitness. Here's another part of that clip.
Given to everybody, but it's given just about. And it takes a long time to get to that situation. Now, I think, to get to a stage 9, I think that if you take a look, it's the same doctor that said that Joe was cognitively fine. There was nothing wrong with him. Well, he said, if it's the same doctor, he said there was nothing wrong there. And that's being proven to be a sad situation. And the auto pen is becoming a very big deal. The auto pen is becoming a big deal because it seems like that maybe was the president who ever operated the auto pen.
So again, attacking Biden's presidency, his mental fitness. Oh, he wasn't there. He was mentally unfit for office. It was an auto pen. It was a mysterious cabal running the country. Again, when asked, okay, this man was just diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. What's your response to it? Here's the last part of the clip.
Given to everybody, but it's given just about. And it takes a long time to get to that situation. Now, I think, to get to a stage 9, I think that if you take a look, it's the same doctor that said that Joe was cognitively fine. There was nothing wrong with him. Well, he said, if it's the same doctor, he said there was nothing wrong there. And that's being proven to be a sad situation. And the auto pen is becoming a very big deal. You know, the auto pen is becoming a big deal because it seems like that maybe was the president who ever operated the auto pen. But when they say that that was not good, they also, you know, you have to look and you have to say that the test was not so good either. In other words, there are things going on that the public wasn't informed, and I think somebody's going to have to speak to his doctor, if it's the same, or even if it's two separate doctors. Why wasn't the cognitive ability, why wasn't that discussed? And I think the doctor said he's just fine, and it's turned out given to everybody, but it's given just about.
So you see, right? No real compassion, no real empathy, nothing that would be expected of a president of any party under any other situation. I mean, imagine that the roles were reversed. And President Biden or President Obama or somebody was expected to react to a Republican president, Trump, Bush, or somebody, and they gave an answer like that. How would Fox News and how would people react? They'd be upset, like, "Wow, you're not even treating this at all with any sort of dignity or class." And again, I'll get to this in just a second, but right now I really want to focus on the standard, the double standard especially. And so Trump doesn't answer like, "Yeah, I called him. No, I'm not going to call him. I have no plans to call him. I haven't thought about it." Carolyn Leavitt was asked a similar question at today's press conference, and this is her response.
On former President Biden's cancer diagnosis, the president put out a very nice message on Truth Social. Has he talked to President Biden directly? Does he intend to call? What does he intend to say directly?
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe they have spoken, but I'm sure the president would be open to doing that. I spoke to him last night about the former president's cancer diagnosis, and the statement that he put out was the initial reaction he had with me on the phone as well. Peter.
So there you go. No, they haven't talked. Maybe he's open to it, but he hasn't done it. Okay. Now I want you to contrast that. Well, actually, I guess I'll just say this too. Trump also talked about stage 9 cancer. Stage 9. No, it's stage 4. There is no stage 9. It's 1 through 4. Okay. Now, what he's talking about, or what you might be confused with, is a Gleason score. Okay. So the diagnosis came after Biden reported urinary symptoms, which led doctors to find a small nodule on his prostate. Biden's cancer is, quote, characterized by a Gleason score of 9 with, quote, metastasis to the bone, the statement said. The Gleason score is used to describe how prostate cancers look under a microscope. 9 and 10 are the most aggressive. The cancer is stage 4, which means it has spread, okay? So he's like, stage 9. There is no stage 9, dumbass. You just don't know what you're talking about. So there's that, okay? Trump's aide putting out, a statement that Trump obviously had nothing to do with. Trump struggling to react in any sort of like vaguely statesman or, decent way on camera, instead using it to meander his way through a vaguely incoherent partisan political attack, okay? Now, once you take that and contrast it with this is what President Biden had to say last year after Donald Trump was the victim of an unsuccessful assassination attempt.
Based on what we know now, I have tried to get a hold of Donald. He's with his doctors. Apparently he's doing well. I plan on talking to him shortly, I hope, when I get back to the telephone. Look, there's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. And I want to thank the Secret Service and all the agencies, including the state agencies, that have been engaged in making sure that the people and we have more detail to come relative to other people maybe injured in the audience. I don't have all that detail. We'll make that available to you. I may be able to come back a little later tonight, but we'll put out a statement if I'm not able to if it's not convenient for you all. But the bottom line is, the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate.
So there he gives a compassionate, empathetic response. First things first, I want to talk to Donald Trump. I tried to talk to Donald Trump. I wasn't able to. I'm going to try again. Hopefully I'll get it done. Glad he's all right. Condemn the violence. Biden could have said, you know what, this is the inevitable result of what happens when Donald Trump ratchets up the political aggression in this country. Or he could have used it as a wedge board or a jumping off board, springboard for some sort of partisan political attack, but he didn't. And then we learned that there was a phone call. As the Wall Street Journal reported, Biden's phone call to Trump was short and respectful. President Biden's call to former President Donald Trump after Saturday's assassination attempt was, quote, short and respectful, a source brief on the call said Sunday. And then Trump himself actually mentioned it, as a matter of fact. Let's see if I can find the quote here. Right here. During the conversation on X, Trump said he needed more people on his security detail and suggested he told President Biden as much when the president called him earlier in the day. Quote, he was very nice today. He called me up to make sure I was okay, to make sure that, do I have any suggestions or do we need more people on my detail because we have 50, 60,000 people showing up to events and, other people don't have to do that, but he couldn't have been nicer. Though Trump had previously confirmed the conversation with Biden and said the pair had, quote, had a very nice call, he had earlier sought to blame Trump or President Biden and Vice President Harris for their rhetoric, okay? But the point is, he got a phone call. Biden called him. And even Trump is like, yeah, actually, this is really nice. He was really kind to me and said, hey, do you need additional security precautions? Now, the contrast could not be clearer. Donald Trump has no sense of compassion, decency, decorum whatsoever. And so when you see people on the right saying, oh my God, thank you, Donald Trump, for reacting as a statesman should. It's bullshit. We have no evidence that he was actually the one who wrote that statement, and his public, appearance to the contrary suggests that he doesn't give a damn whatsoever. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's my take on this. If Donald Trump thinks everything about Joe Biden that he says, he clearly doesn't like the guy. He clearly doesn't respect the guy. He clearly thinks that Biden is a threat to the Republican Party of the country for whatever means. I actually don't expect him to react with decency, right? The people are wondering, how should people react to situations like this? Now, I wish we lived in a West Wing style universe where everybody would react with decorum and civility, but that's just not always the case. And so Trump gave the actual legitimate response from his perspective. He just doesn't care about Biden. He just doesn't, because he has contempt for Biden. And that's very obviously clear. But the expectation is actually higher for Democrats. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, anybody else, would never be permitted to react the way that Trump has if the shoe was on the other foot. MAGA has been all over the place, and we're actually going to do a separate video on that because even Piers Morgan is calling it out. But I just want to say, I'm not going to get offended when people, don't react with kindness about President Biden. I'm sure he doesn't care either because he's got bigger issues at play. But for me, it's about the double standards. Like, okay, well, if there's an obligation to have decency and decorum in a situation like this, and clearly MAGA expected it with Trump when Trump was the victim of the assassination attempt, the expectation was, okay, we have to set politics aside and pray for the former president and give the former president our thoughts and basically rally around Trump. That was the notion at the time. If that's the expectation, then I think you have an obligation to do the same thing when it's a Democrat, even President Biden. And if that's not your impulse, then it sure sounds like you want to employ a double standard. But that's the only standard that MAGA employs. If they don't have a double standard, there would be no standard at all. Now, I will also say it's not in every instance. There have been many prominent Republicans who have been dogging Biden left, right, and center that have actually issued public statements of condolence. Mike Johnson, for example. Marjorie Taylor Greene actually issued a public statement, saying how sad it was. Again, as people point out, what Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks that Joe Biden is the head of a, demonic, cult that of pedophiles and everything, like all the things that she said about the Democratic Party. And she's upset that he has cancer. Like there's an incongruity there. But whatever, she had the wherewithal. Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, had the wherewithal to issue a public statement of compassion. Trump just totally stepped on a rake here, caught on camera. Oh my God, you're asking me to do this on camera? And instead, it's a partisan political attack. Again, I'm not personally offended by it. To me, it's just the double standard. It's like, if decency and decorum are what you want, then you got to reciprocate. Like, that's the only way decency and decorum exists. It has to be reciprocal. And I think too often on the right, it is not. It is expected, but not given. The last thing I'll say regarding President Biden's cancer diagnosis, my mother died in 2018 of stage 4 small cell lung cancer. Cancer, death of any kind, right? Unless you die in your sleep. Most death just sucks. And cancer is particularly brutal. And it's not like it is in most of the movies. There's a lot of ugliness, like a lot of physical pain associated with it, physical changes, deformities. It's just awful to watch. It really is. And it also can affect later on, the personality in the brain and things like that. It's awful. It's not just even the physical ailment. It takes a toll everywhere, and it takes a toll on people's loved ones. So it's sad. It's sad when anybody gets cancer in a situation like this. I really wouldn't wish on anybody. So I just don't know what goes from here. I expect, again, stage 4, and at President Biden's age, at this point, it's probably just about time management. Seems to be the consensus from the medical experts I've read. I suppose he could get a miracle. But that's where we are. And it will be interesting to continue to watch the political reactions to this, especially given, the increasingly public discussions about Biden's mental fitness and mental health. It doesn't seem that that's going to slow that conversation down at all. I know some people were like, well, maybe that'll table some of the conversations or deep dives or forensic audits into, whether or not Biden was mentally fit for office. People are going full steam ahead. Fox and CNN and others, full steam ahead. So I don't think that what happened to President Biden vis-a-vis his cancer diagnosis is going to change that at all. So if you're expecting that, I wouldn't hold my breath. I really wouldn't. But there we are. President Biden has a terrible diagnosis. Donald Trump reacts in a predictably Trumpian fashion, totally selfish and self-interested, totally alien to the notion of, again, decency, decorum, empathy. And he can't even reciprocate what Biden showed him when his health was in jeopardy last year. The contrast between these two characters could not be more stark. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.